Good morning, everyone. My name is Jay, and I'm codependent. I just wanted to let you know up front that this workshop is being recorded. I'm going to do my best to get what people say on the recording. If you do not wish to be recorded, I encourage you to not share during the recording time and find someone to share with after the workshop. Thank you. I'd like to start with a moment of silence, followed by the CoDA fourth step prayer, which, if you don't happen to have that on you, is at the very tippity top of the folded sheet. In this moment, I'm willing to see myself as I truly am, a growing, unfolding, spiritual being resting in the hands of a loving God. I can separate who I am from what I've done, knowing that the real me is emerging, loving, joyful, and whole. Once again, I am Jay, and I'm codependent. I did a workshop about a month ago, and somebody gave me some feedback that I should really start with some information about myself. So that's what I'm going to do. This workshop is called Practicing Healthy Communication and Boundaries in the Group Conscience Process. And I'd like to start by saying that what I do is I find areas that I need a lot of help with, and I go through a bunch of literature and find out, how could I run a workshop on this? And so I get a lot out of that. And then when people share during the workshop, I get a lot out of that too. So I'm being of service to help everybody, including myself. So, healthy communication. I am a sort of codependent who I was just in the workshop on people-pleasing, and I was very much a doormat to a lot of people. I did a lot of communicating that was not in full honesty. For example, I'd have friends say, "Hey, we're doing this thing in a month. Are you interested?" And instead of saying no, I would say, "Maybe I'll get back to you," and then just never did. A lot of times people would say, "Hey, I'm going to do this thing. Do you think that's a good idea?" And I'd say, "I don't know," even if the answer was, "No, I think that's a crazy idea that I would never do." Through working the CoDA program, I've learned that I can make I statements, and if I'm dealing with a human being, and I pretty much always am, that person is able to take care of him or herself. Human beings that are maybe older than 10, 18, I don't know, pick a number. I did the steps, and I worked with a sponsor, and I learned how to communicate with an individual. But I had trouble communicating with groups. I had trouble communicating with people who weren't as close to me as my sponsor. And so I asked, how can I get better at these things? And my sponsor, I've come to understand that this is what a sponsor should say at this sort of question, said, "Go be of service. Go get involved in the business part of your home meeting. Go get involved at the area meeting." For me, that's LA CoDA. And so I did. I went to a couple of meetings at LA CoDA, and then it was elections. And there was a lot of sitting in the room and staring until someone would take a position. And so when they announced the position of vice chair, I asked what was involved in that, and they said, the position of vice chair is to step in and be the chair when the chair is unable to do that. Otherwise, you have nothing to do except sit there. I said, that's the job for me, because I knew that chair was going to probably be at every single meeting and never hand over the meeting. So I was able to be of service and be involved in the communication aspect of that meeting. What have I gotten out of that? I am now the chair of LA CoDA, and by participating in the group conscience process, I've learned a whole heck of a lot of stuff about boundaries, about being able to disassociate myself from what others say, even if it's directed directly at me. For example, there was a group conscience where someone came into the meeting, the only reason they were there was to pass their motion, and they were never going to come back. And when the meeting wasn't really going their way, they looked at me and said, "Aren't you going to do something about this?" And I said, "Who's next to talk?" Because, at least in our area, the position of the chair is to facilitate the meeting. The chair doesn't get a vote. The chair is not supposed to have an opinion. I have lots of opinions, but I've learned to keep those to myself. I kind of tack that onto the anonymity aspect of our program. And just continue to conduct the meeting. Because the chair is just there to make sure the stuff goes. And if that person thinks I'm supposed to be an authority, that doesn't mean I have to be an authority. So I've gotten a lot out of that sort of service. And so today we're going to look at some of the blocks that keep us from group consciences. In my home meeting, there's a lot of people who show up for the meetings and we say, on a regular week, "Hey, we're going to have fellowship," and people hang out outside the building for like half an hour. Any week we announce it's a group conscious. "Oh, I got groceries to do." They're out of there in 30 seconds sometimes, and the core group stays and has the group conscience. So I guess I'm going to make a case for there's a lot of recovery to be had in that group conscience. So there are 2 handouts. If you didn't get both, they're back here on the back chair. One is a full sheet. We're going to get to that in a little bit. And the other is this folded sheet, which is booklet style. The front, I will point out, has my name and my area and my email, which I'm not going to read into the microphone. But you who are here are totally welcome to email me if you have questions later on. And we're going to look at these 4 boxes. Hopefully you have a writing implement. If not, I think I saw a glass full of pens in the back, and they're also findable in other places. We're going to go box by box. Is there anyone who has a timer or a timer involved in their digital communication device? Hey, all right. Would you be willing to set that timer for 2 minutes?
No.
I appreciate your amended willingness. So the first question here, we've got 4 boxes arranged in quadrants. This one's on the top left. It says, number 1, before CoDA, what were my problems with communication skills and boundaries? And we're going to write for 2 minutes. If you run out of room on here, there's room in other pieces of paper. There's notepads in the back, etc. And it looks like a lot of you have your own paper. So we've started. So that was about 2 minutes. Little feet. This is my first time working this workshop. Was that a good amount of time to fill that box? All right. Excellent. I'd like to open the floor to 2 shares. Is there anyone interested in reading what they wrote? Once again, we're recording. I'm going to hold this thing out.
My name's James. I'm a codependent.
Hi, James.
One of the communication skills boundaries that I had is not being able to say what I mean without saying it mean.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
I'm Christine.
Hi, Christine.
I could never give a solid yes or no. I could never make up my mind. I could never say yes or no.
Okay.
I was always, like you said, I don't know, maybe,
Thank you.
when I really knew what it was.
Thank you both. The second question is, what negative beliefs about myself fueled those behaviors? So the behaviors that you wrote about in box 1, to the right of that, box 2, what negative beliefs about yourself fueled the behavior? So for me, I didn't tell people that a straight answer. I didn't say no to people because I thought if I said no, they'd stop calling me and they wouldn't be friends with me. It was a fear of abandonment. That was 2 minutes. Are there 2 different people who would like to share anything they wrote from this box?
Well, I felt like I was defective and worthless, and so nobody would really want to hear what I had to say. It wouldn't be valuable.
Thank you for sharing.
So.
I am not important. I don't know enough, and my answers had to be right and perfect.
So the third box is in the lower left. The question is, how have these negative core beliefs kept me from participating, and in this case, in group consciences or business meetings at the meeting level, at the community level, maybe at the intergroup level, etc. I just recently got involved with my intergroup And I realized that I was kind of afraid of the personalities there. And rather than be afraid and isolate, I decided to practice alternate behavior, and face my fears and grow through that process. So, can I get 2 more minutes, please? Question: how have those negative core beliefs kept me from participating? Are there 2 people who would like to share?
I've been extremely shy, and I'm trying to get out of it.
Thank you for sharing. She said she's been extremely shy and have been trying to get out of it.
I have a deep relationship with God, and I felt my ideas were too spiritual and didn't attend the workbook sessions of my group. And last week I did, and people said they were helpful, my ideas.
Thank you for sharing. The last question. What benefits have I seen in myself and others to participating in the group conscience process? Now, often for me these are personal benefits, but also I see a lot of benefits in the more people who attend a group conscience, the higher chance there is that higher power will filter through, but also that we get ideas that other people might not have come up with who are the regular attendees of the group conscience. So if we can get 2 more minutes, what benefits have I seen in myself and others to participating in the group conscience process? All right. So the 4th question. Is there anyone interested in sharing?
I wrote, there's been an improvement in not being controlled by my thoughts, and also for myself and towards others by not judging them.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I get to see how much other people know.
Thank you. All right. So this is where we're at, and if you look very carefully, we've kind of just done a very specific, targeted step 4, and for those of us who've shared, a little bit of step 5 as well. So let's see where else we can go from here. We're going to go to the 2nd page. This is on the inside, and the header is, what is a group conscience, and what is it for? A group conscience is a method of determining how a group should proceed, where everybody has a say, and if possible, we're allowing higher power's will to guide the group rather than any individual, which for me is very different than my childhood. When I was a kid, Dad was in charge. It doesn't matter what anybody else wants to do, this is what we're doing. We're going camping in Zion. We're going to go on this hike. I'm knee-high to a grasshopper. This is not a good time for a medium-level 15-miler. And so it gets to the point where, Dad finishes the hike while Mom, me, and my brother are sitting in the middle of this trail. She's trying to keep us semi-entertained and not collapsing, etc. What's the group conscience? Well, we got to take care of our littlest or most unable members, make sure that they've got what they need, then start taking care of the wants. We do the needs first and then the wants. And so this brings us to tradition 2. For our group purpose, there's but one ultimate authority. A loving higher power is expressed to our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. When I first came in to CoDA, I looked at, the secretary is clearly in charge of this meeting. And that was reinforced by one of my meetings. The secretary would point to you when you raised your hand and it was time to share. Another meeting, whoever was speaking last called on you. That's the tag style, and in this case, less authority. But letting higher powers, but not just any higher power, a loving higher power, dictate what our group does has very positive benefits for directionality. So Healthy Meetings Matter is a pamphlet put out by CoDA, Core. It's one of the $3 ones. And it has a lot of stuff that talks about how to make meetings healthier. And it's got a big section, starting on page 7, about the group conscience process. If you'll bear with me a moment, I'd like to read a few highlights from that. It says, CoDA is structured according to the 12 traditions. The 4th tradition gives each group the freedom to choose its own structure, which is determined by group conscience at the group's business meeting. Some structural decisions to be made include what guidelines will be used for sharing, how might the meeting deal with crosstalk, how will newcomers be greeted and integrated, how will collecting 7th tradition donations, ordering literature, and other pertinent issues be handled, when will regular business meetings take place, what are the group's financial needs, how will those needs be met. The CoDA Meeting Starter Packet provides a wealth of information and guidelines on meeting structure. Decisions are made in CoDA through a process of thoughtful discussion called group conscience. In this process, every member present has a voice and a vote. With the help of a loving higher power, members open their minds to all viewpoints presented and then cast a vote for the one seen as best for CoDA. And I like that this booklet says thoughtful discussion. There have been a lot of times in my past where my emotions get the best of me and my brain switches off, but I'm still arguing. And I've seen it later with other people. And, I'm watching them start to edge towards, rage. And, whoa, you're not here anymore. I need to walk away from this now to keep myself safe, etc. If we're thoughtful, we're present, we're here, and we're thinking not only, importantly, about ourselves. Am I in halt mode? Am I communicating in a loving way? But also making sure that, if I've offended someone, I make those amends before we get back to the business, wherever possible. That's very difficult for me. It also says that we establish healthier ways of relating to one another. Well, the big question for me was always, healthier than what? And in the Blue Book, on pages 119 to 120, in the frequently asked questions section, it says, it has a heading, what are non-physical and passive forms of abuse and control? Now, on page 118, it has what are physical and aggressive forms of abuse and control, and it mentions things like pinching, scratching, ganging up on another, unwanted kissing or touch. If my meeting's got those problems, I'm not attending anymore. But I often see in personalities these non-physical and passive forms of abuse and control come out. I see it in my family. I see it in my interpersonal relationships sometimes. Maybe some of these will ring true for you as well. It says, we found 8 areas which help identify some of the non-physical forms of abuse and control. Criticism, which includes shaming, put-downs, mocking, blaming, name-calling, intimidating or taunting others, insinuations, and using meaningless words or gestures, like, this one. I'll do it again for those heads. Apparently I've been dismissed or something. I don't know if that person's listening. Verbal abuse, shouting, being vulgar, continuously raging, using profanity, angry expressions or gestures to control. Misrepresenting, falsifying. That's a big one for me. I sometimes move into pretending to know more than I do. I heard something from this one person, but I don't have any personal experience with it, but I'm going to tell you what I heard so that I sound like I know what I'm talking about. Exaggerating, distorting, lying, withholding or misstating information, and being unfaithful. Dominating, controlling, claiming to know the truth. There it is again. Commanding, analyzing others' behavior through logic or shame. Suppressing others emotionally, refusing to offer support, attention, respect, or validation of others' feelings, not offering affirmations or compliments. Denying self-care, needlessness, I'm not hungry, I'll keep working. Addictions, people-pleasing, caretaking or isolation. Financial constraints, controlling the spending of others, non-support of a partner's desire to work, making financial promises with no intention of keeping them. Power tactics, hurrying others to make decisions, shaming, accusing, pouting, threatening, manipulating others, using money, sex, children, or religion to control. Now, I don't see all of those in my business meetings, but I see many of those every once in a while cropping up. And I could show up at a business meeting, see those things, and suddenly say, oh, I don't want to go there. It's going to trigger me. I need to avoid that. But for me, when I'm ready, I should never do something before I'm ready. When I'm ready, I trust that my higher power is never going to give me anything more than I can handle. If it's coming up, my higher power believes that I can take care of myself and take care of whatever the situation is. Keep myself out of harm and keep myself in positive and loving mind space. And so, with that in mind, I kind of actively seek out those challenges when I'm not in halt mode and I've got myself pretty squared away in the other areas. I go out and I seek, how can I mix it up with other people? What will that reveal to me? So, right here, healthy direct communication. We have some different forms of indirect and its direct alternate. When we communicate directly, we speak our truth without minimizing, altering, or denial of our true thoughts or feelings. When I am communicating directly and lovingly, I am not using non-physical and passive forms of abuse and control. So, a form of indirect communication is questioning. Do you think it would be a good idea to blah, blah, blah? When I mean, I think it would be a good idea to blah, blah, blah. I'm taking myself out of it, so if someone rejects it, I protect myself from that. Would anyone object if I shut this door? Well, I'm going to shut the door and keep myself safe, and if somebody else has a problem with that, they can get up and open the door. We're all adults, capable of movement, making arms happen. Passive voice. This is referred to in Communication Recovery, the one-page booklet, as weasel words. A person might, but we can use direct communication by having a firm understanding of our needs and what it is we want to communicate and saying that directly. I want fill in the blank. Self-effacing language. I see this often in my workplace, and I still do it every once in a while. I have something to say, but I don't want to be too aggressive, and I want to kind of protect myself, so I say, this is probably a dumb question, but here's my question. And if somebody says, well, that is a dumb question, then I said it first. I put myself down before somebody else had a chance to do so. Rules lawyering. This is probably the one I see the most in my group consciences. We can't do that because the rules say blank. Well, I don't know about your area, but we call ours guidelines as a constant reminder of, this is what we thought was a good idea at one time, but we can't predict what other situations are going to come up in the future. So we're all adults capable of handling things. If we allow higher power to be in charge, we're going to do what's right, even if we are going against what this Article 8, Section 4, subparagraph B, I don't know. Victim language. These are often I statements that have should or have to. Yeah, I have to go to my meeting. Well, really, I choose to go to my meeting. I have to go. I've got an appointment. Well, I choose to go. This is important, but I made a prior thing, and it's important to me to take care of myself and do what I said I was going to do. Defensive or over-explaining language. people go on and on, beating that dead horse. Now that I've read this, I wonder if I've been doing that this whole time, but I will forge ahead. And I give an appropriate level of intimacy depending on the person or situation. You know, this is the information I have. And I'm going to trust that if you have questions, you're going to ask them. So, we're about to move on into the action phase of this workshop. But before we do that, I'm going to ask, does anyone have any questions about anything going on this page?
I have a question.
Yes.
When you do your group conscience, do you do it, like, for example, do you, like, once a month instead of having a regular meeting, do you do a group conscience? Or do you do it at a completely separate time?
Okay, so the question is, how does the meeting go about its group conscience process? Yeah. Is there a set time, or is it during the meeting, after the meeting? Every meeting is autonomous, so each meeting gets to decide for itself how it wants to maintain, do these things, have its business. The two meetings that I go to have a specific date and time that the group conscience meeting happens. For both of those meetings, it's the first, whatever day that meeting meets, of the month. Because the LA CoDA meeting is the second Saturday, that guarantees we'll have a chance to talk about any LA CoDA motions and make our group's decision so that those can be passed on to the area. Does that make sense? I've been to other meetings where, yeah, we just have a group conscience whenever somebody has something to bring up. I was at a meeting 2 weeks ago where that's the case, and I found out that they haven't had a group conscience in 2.5 years because the last time they had one, a bunch of personalities were really getting in the way, and so the meeting was kind of avoiding that process, in my humble opinion. But for all my meetings, we have a specific boundary on how long it goes. We can move to extend during the meeting, but with that boundary, we can remind, hey, you're going over your time. We've got a lot of stuff to get through, so could you please wrap it up? That sort of thing. But whatever your group thinks is best, as long as higher power is involved, that's going to be best. Any other questions? All right. People have been coming in. I'm going to count real quick. Amazing. Okay. We are going to divide into 2 groups of 8. You may decide how you want to do that. I've set up 7 chairs here, and we'll bring another one over there. And looks like 6 chairs with 7 chairs, so we'll bring another chair over there. And bring it up to 8 chairs. So we're going to get into 2 groups. And what I would like you to do, I'm going to give you a separate handout here, is have some group consciences. We're going to practice these direct communication skills. We're going to practice not doing those passive and non-physical forms of abuse and control. And we're going to create a brand new meeting together. I am aware that there are the standard forms of meetings. There's the sharing meeting. There's the lit study meeting. There's the speaker meeting. I would like to challenge you to think outside the box. Come up with a crazy, this would be awesome kind of idea for a meeting. Okay, and there's 3 examples here. I'm not going to read them word for word, but in LA there's an In This Moment meditation meeting. And they have literally torn the pages out of one of the meditation books and laminated every single page. Cut the laminations out and put them into a box. They pass the box around, you pull out a card, and you have 2 meditations to choose from. And you sit in the park and you meditate for 10 to 15 minutes. And then after that, you share about what came up. Example B, a literature creation meeting. This one, to my knowledge, doesn't exist, but it's an opportunity for people to write like an article for their local newsletter or for Connections or for the World CoDA literature, and write it, read it aloud to people, and then, that brought up some stuff for me. I'm going to write about that too. So it's kind of a writing meeting, but at the end, here's the release document. If you're willing, give us what you wrote, staple it to this release document, and we're going to send it to somebody to use to carry the message to the codependent who still suffers. Example 3C, an Ask It Basket meeting. We're going to have some panelists. They're each going to share for a specific amount of time, and then any newcomers or old-timers who have questions, write them on a slip, put them in a basket, and then God's going to be in charge of knowing which questions get answered first, second, last, not at all, etc. So, is that out of the box enough for you? All right.
Can I ask a question?
You can.
So, are we supposed to be sitting, and this is the rule thing, are we supposed to be sitting and doing this, or are we supposed to be coming up with other options?
So what I'd like you to do is you're all going to stand. You're going to go to one of these two groups, and I'd like you, with your group, instead of as an individual, come up with an interesting meeting. We're going to do that for, I don't know what time it is. Holy cow. Wait, it's been 45 minutes. This is an hour and a half. So we end at 11:45. So we're going to do this for 20 minutes. And at the end, we're going to take 10 minutes to share what came up for us. And if you're willing, you can share your awesome idea for a new meeting. All right? You get to decide how you go to your seats, and I'll help you with the chairs. That is all the time that we have for this mock business meeting. If I could get your assistance putting the chairs back and coming back, that would be fantastic. Thank you very much for participating. I'd like to start with a round of applause for ourselves. Thank you very much for giving it a shot. On the back page here, the back of the handout, it says, "What did I notice in others or myself?" And I'm very much, I've been told over and over again, don't take other people's inventory. For me, I've noticed that when I spot it, I've got it. And I looked for it, I can't quite find it fast enough. There's a bit in the book about we often project our own things onto other people. And so, if I see somebody, that person's not following the rules, well, turns out in other situations, I've been a major rule follower, blah, blah, blah. So, anyway, if there was something that you saw either in yourself or in another person that you're like, that upsets me, then jot it down. Not as a bad me sort of thing, but as I'm going to take this and I'm going to do some writing about that later and share that writing with my sponsor and grow. But as in any good fourth step, don't forget to pat yourself on the back or pat other people on the back for doing things that you really liked. Wow, I really liked that person's boundaries. Or, wow, I really stood up for what I believed, even though I got voted down by the rest of the group, etc., etc. So I think it's worth taking a minute to do this. Let's start that now. And that was a minute. And based on what I experienced today, what can I do to make my communication healthier? I mentioned step 4 and talking to a sponsor. Is there anything else that you can think of that you could do to make your communication healthier, both in the group conscience process and without? Let's take another minute. All right, so I'd like to ask if there's anyone interested in sharing. You can talk about things that you noticed need work. You can talk about things that you noticed went well. You can talk about what you experienced today. We have 4 minutes for shares, so let's try and keep it to a minute each.
On the stuff that needs work, for me, I didn't stand up for my own needs. What I mean is I did not stand up for my own thoughts.
For me, I get super defensive, and when I get defensive, then I get judgmental. And but the good thing is that at least I was speaking up, but then I noticed that I need to consider why someone else is saying something, and that there's something probably in their background that is making them say that, and then in check, not be so judgmental because of that.
Thank you.
When I saw someone in the group acting as a self-proclaimed leader, I voted against them. But then when I was reminded we didn't have much time and let's get down to the real business, I changed my mind and voted for them.
Thank you.
Christine, codependent, and based on what I experienced today, what I can do to make my communication healthier is to be aware of others' feelings and realize that everyone's not going to agree. And the second thing is to be in touch with my needs, but also be aware of others' needs and wants in a healthy way and not the caretaking, people-pleasing way. So I took a lot away from this. This is amazing.
Thank you. Got about 2 more minutes if there's anyone else.
I thought it was fun to go through the process and see that each person had something to offer and that no one person had to do everything, you know. We even had somebody that was keeping track of time. So I thought that was helpful. You know, that everybody had their own talents and skills to bring to it. It was positive.
I think healthy communication is all about handling differences of opinions. Win-win is the best. It's not win, you lose. And so to be part of the decision process is a good learning experience. Be open, willing to change and accept others' opinions. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Time for one more.
I think with me, it was more trying not to be annoyed or bothered emotionally by somebody else's perspective of a comment I made, or and just trying to stay in my own emotions and knowing what I meant to say and not taking that on as my own.
If I may, I don't know what you experienced, but it was very interesting for me being outside the groups, being able to hear with detachment. And I heard at least one group, and kind of in other areas, as time got closer and closer, the stress and energy levels raised just a little bit. And so for me, I didn't mention this earlier, one of the most important things that I've learned from business meetings is that it doesn't have to be finished now. Time limits are things that we put on. This isn't God putting it on. The only things that I've ever experienced in life that have time limits are things like braking early enough in traffic, and my body just does it. If I have time to think, I have more time than I think to think. Ooh, I just made that up. We are pretty much out of time. I have 45 seconds. I want to respect the boundaries of others by allowing you to get up, stretch your legs, that sort of thing. I'm going to clear this table for the next workshop and go outside. I would really appreciate any feedback on, clearly there wasn't enough time for the meat part, I think, so any suggestions you have about what I can axe or any feedback you have in general. I appreciate you all being here. I would like to take the last 15 seconds and close with the Step 10 prayer, which is there at the bottom of your handout. It says, "In this moment, I live my life in a new way. As I continue to open my heart and mind little by little, one day at a time, I reveal my true self, mend my relationships, and touch God." Hey, by the way, there's a list of characteristics and their recovery patterns. I didn't even mention those, but they're nice as a checklist for, oh, I did notice that. All right, I'm done. Thank you very much again for coming. You can ask me all the questions you want. I'm going to let you know up front that I have less than all of the answers. In fact, I found that I have almost none. And I can turn this thing off if that makes you more comfortable.
No, because I'm buying the CD.
Oh, okay.
And I'll have $40. I want to get it all.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, so those examples that you gave
Of?
those other meetings,
Okay.
so did those come about by group conscience?
Examples A and C are basically my interpretation of what's going on. Like, it's very difficult to summarize what's going on in a meeting in a paragraph. even if it is 8-point font. So it's just to give you a basic idea of, hey, this group is doing something like this. If that inspires you, you can go have a group conscience. Does that answer your question?
Well, do you think that they came up with the group conscience to create this meeting, or do you just think somebody said, I want to have a meeting and I'm going to do it this way?
Okay, I don't know the answer to that question. I have been told that when starting a meeting, I was told this, you need at least one other person so that you've got a group conscience and that allows higher power in. So example B, that's just this concept that I've been bouncing off people who all say, that sounds great, but none of them actually want to get involved in creating that meeting with me. So that is technically just me. Does that answer your question? Okay.
I had a question. Mine was just brainstorming, putting out all your wild ideas for a new group.
Okay.
And no comments, no advice, no right or wrong.
Okay.
So that, I was the only person who voted for it.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing.
And one more question. Parenting and recovery, parenting yourself or children?
I don't know, not my workshop. But if it sounds interesting, you can go find out if it's right for you.
It's probably parenting yourself. This is CoDA stuff.
I done the other.
Did you have another question about the workshop?
So, do you have to have, like when I started a group in Utah, my friend and I started a group in Utah.
Okay.
We got the Newcomer packet and we got our number and we started a group and we've been meeting for 4 years.
Okay.
So, do you know, like if you start one of these other kinds of groups, do you have to run it through the CoDA main stuff, or can you just start it?
I haven't memorized my tradition numbers, but I do know that the tradition says that all groups are autonomous. There are certain things, according to the meeting starter packet / fellowship service manual, that you must do in order to be a CoDA meeting, and they are read the preamble, the welcome, the steps, and traditions. You need to register with CoDA.org so that you're findable on the meeting list and that sort of thing. There's a couple other things that I can't remember off the top of my head. But
you have some other kind of interesting meetings.
yeah, there are meetings in my area that I consider not to be CoDA meetings that are listed with CoDA.org and with the intergroup. For example, there's a group that reads outside literature as part of their meeting. And that makes my blood boil as a codependent. But if that's working for them, apparently that's okay. And it's not for me to police other people. If that's working for them and their God says that's a good idea, then great. But that's not a place I'm going to feel safe. That's not a place I'm going to go.
So are there many meetings in your area?
Are there many meetings in my area? I'm in LA. We have 50 meetings on our meeting list. 50. I consider... Well, I haven't been to all the meetings, but I've gone to some that I will never return to, or well, I shouldn't say never. I will probably one day return to see if anything's changed. But I go to meetings, I decide, is this a good fit for me? If it's not, I go try another meeting. But some areas, there's one meeting all month. So in that case, I have found there are people in LA who are developing a meeting inventory list of questions so that you can do business meetings and answer these questions. It's way too many questions to answer all at once, but there was a meeting, I've only heard rumors, I'm sorry. It's a women's meeting. They had 3 people attending regularly, and newcomers would show up and be turned off by the whole thing. They'd go to other meetings and talk smack about it, which is kind of how I knew. Then somebody went in and said, here's the meeting inventory, and more people came in, enjoyed the meeting inventory, and now it's a meeting of like 15 to 20 strong every week. And the personalities who are there, they've disappeared because it's no longer a meeting they're interested in. So
what was the purpose of the meeting inventory?
The purpose of the meeting inventory is, hey, is our meeting broken? If so, how can we fix it? If our meeting's not broken, how can we make it better for carrying the message to the newcomer, the codependent who still suffers?
Because the evidence was people weren't staying, so you take it inventory.
Yeah.
Like one of the things in our meetings is, in 4 years, I'm the only person that's left from the original group. So we have a high turnover. And we have a lot of people that come through, but now we have about 10 to 12 people that attend pretty regularly. And so I've always just thought part of that was growing pains, of getting started and everything. But it could be because maybe there's something wrong with our group, so the way that we're doing things, I don't know. So I'm just really interested in asking questions about it.
Well, and growing pains are difficult, and it's tough to tell what's going on with a meeting. I found that the group conscience process brings a lot of that to light. And for me, in a lot of meetings, I have learned to speak my mind. That's a bunch of years of program. But I look at newcomers, and they'll walk up to me and say, who do I talk to about this thing that's coming up for me? Well, you can talk to me. Oh, la la la. Hey, that sounds like a great motion that you could make. Oh, is that how it's done? Yeah, let me walk you through it, blah, blah, blah. People who don't have the information, they're not going to get it until somebody gives it to them. And so, as a person who's been given so much in program, it's on me to give it back to the next person coming through the door. I started a meeting a year and a half ago, and, we publicized it. We went to other active meetings and said, here's a flyer for our meeting. We'd love it if you'd come check us out. If you don't like us, don't come back. And a lot of people at my other meetings came and didn't like it. And that's okay. But newcomers come in and that sort of thing. My Sunday meeting, it kind of goes in waves. We meet in a park. And if you've never been there before, it sounds like we're meeting outside on the grass. And in December, sure, it's California, but for Californians, it's very cold, and so they don't bother showing up. So because, a certain percentage of people are going to disappear for one reason or another, our attendance gets lower in the winter and gets way high in the summer. And that's just, I've accepted that as natural. But every time somebody, I think this meeting should be 15 minutes longer, we'll have a group conscience. The group says, no. Or the group says, yep. And I don't think it should go 15 minutes longer, but that's tough for me because it's the group's conscience. It's not my best thinking.